Hey, what's up? So today I want to have a bit of a discussion about Exosister, and I also want to talk about something I've noticed with archetypes and themes in general, and that's very frequently there will be very solid cards within the confines of the theme and its overall game plan that get completely glossed over. And I'm not totally sure why this is. I know with Yu-Gi-Oh! It might be because, we have a massive card pool and we can get very focused on running non-engine, just strong generics and stuff like that. And maybe due to that, we gloss over some potentially good options. But sometimes it's just kind of absurd because I want to look at like Defanging and Carpe Diem here. I'll actually talk about Defanging first since this is a Scareclaw card. This prevents your opponent from targeting your Scareclaw Link monsters or Visa Starfrost you control with card effects. They also can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. They can be sent or banished, however. And you banish any monster destroyed by battle with a Scareclaw Link monster or Visa Starfrost you control. So these effects are really, really good. This means if you can establish this card very early on in your turn, your opponent can't really interact with your Lightheart. A lot of the time they'll save their Ash Blossom for your field spell anyway. But in the event that they only have Effect Veiler or Infinite Impermanence or something else that would need to target it, they can't do that. It's pretty handy even against Ghost Ogre because although she doesn't target, right, they can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Beyond that, once per turn, you can banish a Scareclaw Link monster from your field or graveyard and target one card your opponent controls, destroy it. So this allows you to remove problematic bodies or even floodgates and stuff pretty consistently, which is one thing that it shares in common with Exosister Carpe Diem. It just allows you to pop an opponent's spell or trap when one of your Exosister monsters is involved in battle. So this can trigger on your turn and your opponent's turn potentially. Beyond that, Carpe Diem here also has that prohibition effect, and I've oftentimes seen a lot of different perspectives when it comes to the discussion of this card, but it's one of the reasons that Arment was really, really good to play when the theme first came out. I think it's kind of vastly underrated how good this is. I've seen some people say that, the effect's not that good because Prohibition lasts forever, but this is debatably stronger in a lot of contexts because usually you kind of just want to keep your opponent off of a particular card for a turn, right? Like on your own turn, if you open this or packs in a way to just do your Exosister combo, you'll activate this, you'll do your Martha or Stella line, whatever it is, and on the first Exceed summon, you can protect yourself against Nibiru, which is also something that's kind of relevant going into this upcoming format, right? On the opponent's turn, if you're tagging out with Magnifica or if you're using Arment, that puts you in a position to control the opponent's board a bit. They try to develop their board, they're trying to go into certain cards, and if you have any familiarity with the deck and the lines that they're doing, you can just be like, oh, okay, you can't use that, right? You could shotgun the Arment in the standby phase going into Jabreen, for example, or Osophiel would also work here, and just tell your opponent, okay, no Ponics. So this one is a little, like, again, more confusing to me. I can kind of understand Arment to some degree, because even though this card has the synergy with Carpe Diem, like, it's just a bit easier for me to comprehend that Arment kind of fell through the cracks as we got more support and people were trying to figure out exactly how to play the deck. But it's also, again, nonetheless, really strange to me because I think one of the biggest boons this deck currently has is using Arment in conjunction with Returnia. Because a lot of the time people will be very confused as to why I'm running, 3 copies of both of these. But basically, I want to maximize the chances I have of opening one of them on turn 1 so that when I go for my Michaelis play, I can search out the other one. And the reason for this is as follows. So basically, we could just activate Martha here. We go into the Michaelis. We already have both of these, so we could just search out Carpe Diem or Vadis. But we have Libellion here. We can actually do something a little more interesting than that. We can normal summon the Martha, which might seem a little bit strange. We'll activate the Sakitama. It will normal summon itself. And we're still going to go for Martha. Michaelis, I'm sorry. And we'll detach the Sakitama. So again, from here, you can search out whatever you need. You can go for Pax, you can go for Vadis. I'm going to go for Carpe Diem. I'll activate that. So we did three. We this is nib week, so that's one thing that you do need to bear in mind since we didn't have this early enough. And from here, we'll grab Serenir. And you could like just set these in here, and that'll work out because on the opponent's turn, you can use Arment to tag this into again your brain, Osophiel, Caspitel, whichever one is the most relevant for your circumstance. That will allow you to banish two things with Returnia. And if you go into Jabrine in particular, she also is a 2800 defensive body while having a negate. And then you get the Serenir to interact with the opponent. But if you're not really like that concerned, you can banish the Sakitama and then do your standard Lubellian thing. And then the nice thing about this is even if they try to take your Lubellian, which, they may opt to do, they wouldn't be able to beat over the Jabrine with this card. So from here, we get the Beast. And we get these. And then in the end phase, of course, you get access to this. And this was one other opening hand that I thought was particularly interesting. So again, you're going to normal summon your Stella. You're going to activate her effect to get your Martha. Just tossing her over there since we're not really going to be interacting with her. Activate Sakitama. Which you get to normal summon. And from here, we can go into either Caspitel or Michaelis, whichever one you think is better for your circumstance. Detach the Sakitama. And from here, you can grab your Returnia, your Armament, your packs, whatever you think you need. I am going to go for Returnia. And this is partially because we're also running our armor guy. But yeah, from here, you do your Lubellian thing. Banish the Sakitama. But this time, because Martha's just on the board, she triggers. So you get to go into your Caspitel. Not going to do that. If you activate her effect, you're actually going to get locked out of your own Lubellian, so do be mindful of that. You detach the Martha, and you can grab whatever you think you need for the follow-up, be that Martha or whatever else. So in this case, I will grab Martha, since, traps put us in a good place, but we don't have anything else in our hand. Want to be able to do a little bit of something on the crackback. And then we sack off the Serenir for the Lubellian. And we send Regain. Lubellian effect to get Beast. And then we can go into Armor Fortress. Armor Fortress will add Full Armored and Armored Exceeds. And this puts us in a pretty nice position because, like, even though we don't have Armament now, we do have this, which means on the opponent's turn, we already have our Dark Knight Lancer. But we flip the Vadis, we can use the Armament Exceeds to overlay those cards immediately, right? Which lets us later use Returnia however we want. Again, being two banishes or to further overlay that Exosister name we make with the Caspitel that's on board to make Magnifica, which again will represent two banishes. Okay. A lot of what I just showed you are things I've been doing for, I think it's like 16 months or so now. And it's just really interesting because, like, so during the Ishizu tier format, I was running a list that was something like this. And it was nice because even with a hand like this, right, you might look at this and be like, oh, I'm brick, but you're not really. You activate this, you use your Mudora effect to summon itself, right? It would be better if one of these was Keldo, because then Keldo would search out another copy. But then, normal summon your Irene, activate her effect, you get to swap the Irene out for another card, Oh, would you look at that? It's Vadis. So now go into Michaelis, and I'm not really sure what would be best here. You know, we already drew a card, so I guess we would have gotten Joel. So I'm just gonna go with the Ash, right? And you can pitch the Mundora here, or you can pitch the Irene. Pitching the Irene makes packs better because you could special summon Sophia. But I'm also pitching her because shuffling her back into the deck isn't the worst thing you could do. And from here, I would just grab the Returning, right? Because you can at least use these two cards in conjunction with each other. So now on the opponent's turn, you could do this, right? And normally with Vadis, you'd want to grab Exo Sister names that aren't Martha, because Martha will cause you to take Ellis out of the deck, right? But here, it's perfectly fine to do that because you can use one of your Mudoras to shuffle some stuff back, potentially disrupt your opponent, and trigger your own Martha. Another nice thing about this is if you have Shifter in hand, you can activate the Shifter at this point, and you just go into whatever you think you need. So no Shifter, so maybe Osophiel is the play that you go for. And then whatever chain order is more relevant, I suppose. But then you can keep your opponent off of, again, Ponix. This should be in defense position. Um, these two are kind of fine because if your opponent tries to triple attack you or something, you can return it in response. And if she manages to live throughout the turn, she goes back into the deck. So another example, right? You open packs in these cards. You use packs. You can search out the Arment. You can search out the Returnia. You can grab your Vadis, whichever one you think is, the most appropriate for this circumstance. And I'm gonna grab a copy of Ellis, which might seem a little bit weird, but it's because we can normal summon the Stella. We can activate the Ellis, which will put us back to 8,000. Stella effect will get us Martha, 8,800. Now, we can go for Caspatel or whatever we think is the most necessary. Gonna go for the Michaelis, activate Michaelis effect. We will pitch either one of these, doesn't really matter. I'm probably just gonna get rid of the Ellis in this case, and I'm gonna grab Returning. You also could grab Carpe Diem, but the reason I do this is because I get to put out the Magnamut and Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, so they can't Ash this. If you got this far, they probably didn't have it, but just to be safe, right? And we already got Michaelis, so we're going to go into Caspatil. You can use this effect at this point because we're not going to be summoning anything from the grave. Detach the Martha. And yo, would you look at that? There's a bunch of stuff you can search out. So sometimes here I would actually grab Irene or Sophia, and the reason for this is just because we are more than likely going to be making Magnifica on the opponent's turn with the Returnia. And that just allows us to tag back into the Michaelis and get another search on the follow-up. But if you want to be safe, just grab the Martha. So like here, you have a higher ceiling like board as a consequence of not using the Martha effect. And that's like the big thing with Martha for me. She's good, she's definitely strong, but that like not Martha Circular, Exo Sister Circular moniker that she gets, it's not the most commonly brought up thing, but I think is a good example of how people look at this card, regardless of what it's actually capable of. Like her second effect that allows her to go into one of your Exo Sister Xyz, even off of one of your own effects, I think is the stronger portion of her. And leveraging when to use her first effect and when not to use her first effect is what actually ends up making her super duper impact. Now, all that being said, I still think Martha is a very strong card. She oftentimes is being used as the backbone of the Exo Sister deck, and to some degree, there is truth in that. However, I do think being over reliant on the card has its issues. And it's also one of the reasons I'm just not really all that comfortable with the builds that cut themselves down to 3 Martha and 3 Ellis and then run a bunch of other non-engine things. Because they have it so much worse than a build like this where they're forced to use Martha's effect more than I am. Yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. If you guys have any insights, please feel free to leave them. And I guess I'll leave you with a replay.